The Gemara says that on Yom Tov, on holidays, that means Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, it is a mitzvah, a chiyuv, compulsory for a person to make his wife and family happy. There's a pasuk, V'samachta b'chagecha, you should be happy on the holays, these 3 holidays, make your wife and children happy. The Gemara says, how does a person go about bringing simcha to his family? The Gemara says, well, what brings simcha? Wine. If you drink a lot of wine, it brings simcha. The Gemara says that's for men. How about the women and children? Especially the women. The Gemara says women, there's only one way to make them happy, and that's by buying them new clothes. You buy a woman new clothes, that to her is a happy holiday. So this is a mitzvah, to have new clothes bought for a wife and family. The Gemara says now that the time that the Mikdash existed, then simcha was only by eating meat. Simcha meaning a festive occasion, a meal with meat in it, that is simcha. Since the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, since then simcha is only with wine. That's what the Gemara says here. Now, it is not mentioned here why. There is a very hidden midrash. It's not the regular midrash. It's one of the extremely hidden ones, and to be very frank, I have spent, honestly, 20 years looking for the midrash. I never found it until, in Eretz Yisrael last summer, I found a source in a very old encyclopedia. I forget the name of the midrash. It's one of the midrashim which are practically unheard of. And there, the statement is brought that this famous statement which I had heard as a child yet, my father had shown, my grandfather had shown, but I had always searched for the origin. The statement is that since the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the rich taste of meat was taken from the meat and put into the bones. You cannot get the original pleasure of meat that existed during the time of the Beit HaMikdash. That is gone now, and if you want that pleasure, that extremely good taste, you'll find it by sucking out the marrow of the bones. That will give you an idea of what the taste of meat was like. Now, this is naturally fact, but there's also let's say a joke said about this, that there was an old man once who was sitting and eating a meal, and he was eating a plate of meat, and he was crying. The rabbi saw him, and he asked, why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because of the Churban Beit HaMikdash. The Holy Temple was destroyed, and there's no more taste to the meat. The meat, it's only in the bones. So the rabbi said, you're not crying over the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, you're crying over the destruction of your teeth. You haven't got any more teeth, you can't chew on the bones. That's what you're crying about. Because the fact is that in the marrow of the bones, there you will find a semblance of what the real taste of meat was like. Now the Gemara says that it is so. There is no longer that rich taste, former taste of meat, and therefore what previously was the cause for simcha now has been transferred to wine. Wine can bring simcha to a person, to the heart of man. Women are not supposed to drink wine. Women are supposed to be given clothes, new clothes for the holidays, the chagim. The Gemara goes into a series of matters of advice on worldly matters, local matters, business, personal matters, and in other words, we deviate now from the regular halachot, laws. The reason is that the Torah teaches midot, character also, and advice at the same time. The Gemara says many times we are told advice in the Gemara about business matters, and this not only to lead us properly in business, but also just for spite, to to show people who are businessmen and think that the rabbis of the Gemara were ones who knew nothing about life. They were immersed completely in the study of Torah and nothing else. Here the Gemara shows us the rabbis of the Gemara knew more about business matters, more about worldly matters than the wisest of these businessmen, diplomats, and so on. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva taught his son, Rabbi Yoshua, a number of items. First, he said, do not sit and study Torah in the center of the city, which means in an open place where people pass by. Simply because if you want to study and concentrate, you cannot do so if you have people passing by who may interrupt you. You must have a place that is set aside for that purpose. The place to study Torah is in a bet midrash. You can't do it where you can be interrupted every moment, because you must have the ability, the opportunity, the opportune place where you can sit, concentrate, and learn without interruption. Secondly, do not live in a city as if you have a choice. Do not live in a city where the leaders of the city are chachamim, tamidei chachamim, where the mayor, the politicians are tamidei chachamim, because it's true that they will sit and study Torah. It's wonderful. But at the same time, they will be so engrossed in their learning that they will become immune to the problems of the local populace. And there's a place for everything, for everyone. It's good to have Talmidei Chachamim in the yeshiva, the knis. But as far as leaders of the city, you have to have those who will devote their time to the problems, solving the problems of the population. Therefore, live in a city where you have ones who are not Talmidei Chachamim as the leading figures in that city. Advice 2, do not enter your home suddenly without knocking. And kol shekain surely do not enter your friend's home without knocking. That is extremely improper, impolite, and it can cause embarrassment. You might walk into your house when the family, one member is doing something which is not modest at the time, and to walk in suddenly, or they're not dressed properly, so it's embarrassing, it is not manner polite, and that's why even to one's own home, before walking in, a person must knock first. Never go without shoes. This for a number of reasons. In fact, this law is so strict that the Gemara says a person should sell everything he has, especially one who is learned, in order to buy shoes. So the most important garment is shoes. And it's not that simple. We find that the beracha we say in the morning, the one beracha we say in the morning for clothing, in particular, which article of clothing is shoes. Sha'asarli called tzadiki, that beracha is blessing Hashem for shoes. But if you say the beracha, that means you're going to wear shoes throughout. There are other reasons why a person should never go without shoes, and of course this is a more serious vein, where it invites chas v'shalom tragedy. Because the only time a person goes without shoes is when he is chas v'shalom in avel. He's in mourning. So therefore, this is something that should be avoided at all costs. Shoes must always be worn except to bed. Well, there too, the Gemara says elsewhere, if a person wants to feel a taste of death, a slight taste of death, what it tastes like, what it feels like, by sleeping with shoes on, you might not detect it, but there is that slight taste there, which means that a person should always wear shoes except to bed. Besides, you make the sheets dirty. And Akiva added too, always eat breakfast, whether it is summer or winter. No matter what the weather is like, a person might have an excuse that at certain times of the year he can get along without food in the morning. Rabbi Akiva advised always eat breakfast, because the breakfast will help you against being harmed by the cold in the winter and against being harmed by the sun, the heat in the summertime. In general, the Gemara says that breakfast saves a person from 83 different types of diseases. The most important meal is breakfast. And this means, of course, breakfast means not just to eat food, but to wash, specifically bread. Breakfast without bread is not considered breakfast. Better a little bit of bread than a heavy meal without bread. And the Akiva added too that it is better that you make your Shabbat into a weekday, Chas Shalom. That means a meal. Eat a weekday meal. Well, we know that a Jew always saves his money in order to buy the best food for Shabbat. There's no comparison between a weekday meal and a Shabbat meal. And the Akiva said it is better to have a weekday meal on Shabbat, that means a light meal, a cheap meal, rather than to have to beg or borrow the money for the Shabbat meal. Spend your own for the little that you can get your own money, rather than to beg or borrow in order to have a better meal on Shabbat. Despite this, the Gemara adds later on that there must still be a difference between the Shabbat meal and the weekday meal, at least a small difference. The Gemara asks, what is that difference? A person cannot afford to buy fish. The Gemara says, then buy little sardines. But something in the family of fish, for kavod Shabbat, no matter how little you can afford. Rabbi Nachman said, taught his son, try your best, strive when dealing in business to deal with, to go in partnership with a person who has a streak of good fortune. One who's successful in business, when you go in partnership with him, you will succeed too. Or deal with him in anything, selling, buying, rather than one whose fate, whose mazal is chas v'shalom bad. Attach yourself to one whose mazal is good, it will rub off upon you. This is not chas v'shalom a superstition. The Gemara learns this from Eov. So that, if possible, a person should try to become partners with or do dealings with those who are successful. This was Rabbi Akiva to his son. And the Gemara says that when Rabbi Akiva was in prison, Romans had him in prison just before they put him to death. Rabbi Shimon ben Arizal, his student, came to the prison, and he said to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi, teach me Torah. Rabbi Akiva said, I will not teach you. Why? Because naturally, if he was caught teaching him, then they could put Rabbi Shimon ben Arizal in prison too. Rabbi Shimon ben Arizal said to Rabbi Akiva, if you don't teach me Torah now, I'm going to tell my father Rabbi Yochai, and he's going to report you to the king and get you in trouble. This is a very strange type of threat. Rabbi Akiva answered, my son, do you think that I don't want to teach you Torah? Much more than a calf wants to be nursed, a cow wants to nurse. Meaning much more than a student wants to learn Torah, the rabbi would certainly much more than teach him Torah. It's just that it's dangerous now. Rabbi Shimon ben Arizal answered, but who is in danger? It's the calf that's in danger. You're not in danger to teach me Torah, you're in prison anyhow. I'm the one that's in danger, and I am willing to accept that danger because I want to study Torah. Now, what did he mean when he said, I'm going to report you to the king, my father report you to the king and get you in trouble? What he meant was, not chas v'shalom disrespectfully. Arizal explains this in a Kabbalah term, very deep Kabbalah, but they will take only the simple explanation. Simply it meant, the Gemara says that a rabbi must teach a student Torah. If he doesn't, it's considered gizelah. He is stealing his rights. The student has a right to learn Torah, and the rabbi is depriving him of that right if he doesn't teach him. Therefore, the Gemara says that the penalty is for the rabbi who refuses to teach Torah, that he may be imprisoned. In a sense, he receives a penalty equal to imprisonment, lashes, or even worse. I don't want to use the exact term. So the Arizal hinted at that. Report you to the king, meaning that the rule is that you're supposed to be imprisoned for not teaching Torah. You're depriving me of Torah. And Yaakov answered, of course I would teach you Torah. It's not that I want to deprive you, Chas v'shalom. Just that I have pity upon you, that you should not be placed in jeopardy. You would be risking your life. Yaakov answered, it is me that is in danger, and you need not worry about my sakana. That's my affair. If I am willing to take a risk for the sake of the study of Torah, then you should go along with me. Rabbi Akiva said, fine. He said, take these words of advice. In the future, if anyone, if you want to be hung, then be hung on a large tree. We use these words in sort of code, so in case he'd be heard by the Romans, they wouldn't know he was teaching Torah. And this was a coded message, meaning if you want people to accept your words, if you tell them a law of Torah, a din, and you want them to accept it, don't say it yourself. Quote it in the name of the origin, the name of the rabbi who said it. A large tree, meaning bring the biggest rabbi who said it as your source of information, then they will surely accept it. They will not refute it to try to argue it. Always quote the origin. That's general mitzvah. The Gemara says one who quotes the origin, the name of the person who said it, he brings Mashiach closer. But here, if you want these words to be accepted, not only quote the origin, but quote the highest rabbi who said it, so that they will not question it. They'll accept it much more quickly. You'll save the time of arguing about it. Secondly, you teach your son. See that you teach him in a sefer that's been examined previously, that there are no errors in it. Because when a child learns Torah, and the print was done carelessly, there are errors in the print. A child's mind is one that absorbs very solidly. And once he absorbs an error, it's very hard to get that error out of his mind. He reads something where there's a mistaken print, the statement is wrong, and in trying to get that error rooted out of his mind, you find difficulty because the child's mind takes in something, it stays there permanently. So before you allow your child to learn from any sefer of Torah, be sure that the sefer is a new one, one that's been examined and has been revised where the errors were removed. Third, he said, do not cook in the same pot that your friend cooked. This means, the Gemara says, advice. Do not marry a divorcee, because you will find that there's a mixture that's wrong, that's unpleasant. You should always be thinking of her first husband and always making comparisons. Say that where you are better than her first husband, nothing will be mentioned. But should there be a fault found in you, she'll bring up the point, my first husband was better in this respect. Or in general, she could find a general life with you not as pleasant as with the first one, but this could do a lot of harm to harmony in married life. Therefore, try to avoid a divorcee, at least during her husband's life. If he is not alive anymore, then there is a much smaller risk of her bringing him up or making comparison, because I think that's gone. Well, Rabbi Akiva said this, do not marry a divorcee, speaking about the fault lying with the woman. Why shouldn't this apply to a woman being advised not to marry a man who divorced his wife? He too will make comparisons, and he did it for her. The answer is, that according to Hebrew law, Torah law, the law of divorce is that a man can divorce his wife at will, whenever he wishes, whenever he pleases, against her will. The wife can never divorce her husband at all. So, therefore, where the man has divorced his first wife, he cannot make comparisons anymore. He divorced her because she wasn't good, he didn't like her at all. There's no problem. There's no danger of him thinking about the qualities of his first wife. But this was only in those times. Nowadays that we have the Chidam Rabbi Gershon, when the Rabbi Gershon gave out this Chidam that no man can divorce a woman against her will, and the same advice applies to women too. Since a man divorces a wife not against her will, but with the consent of both, or whether they were compelled to become divorced for a different reason, then the same advice applies to women. Do not marry a man who is divorced, because he will make the comparison, and it can make life bitter. This is what is called a hidden term, cooking in the same pot that your friend cooked. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi taught Rabbi 3 things. 1, do not cause a defect upon yourself. A mum means a physical defect. Don't make yourself a physical defect. What does that mean? Do not go into court against 3 people. Yourself on one side as the plaintiff or defendant, against the opposing side is a party of 3. Because many times they'll be unscrupulous and they'll break it up into a party of 1. One of them will go into court against you, the other 2 become witnesses for him. You automatically lose the case that way. So if you're going against 3, you'll lose the case. Arrange to have, if it's a case like that, avoid going to court. Make a settlement, because it's still better than going into a court where you are sure to lose. Second, do not stand over an item in a store, in a shop, looking at it, staring at it, studying it, when you don't have money with you to buy it. You arouse the excitement on the part of the shopkeeper, the storekeeper, the anxiety. He tries his best to sell it to you with the hope. You build up his hopes that he's going to make a sale. When you know certainly that you don't have money with you, you can't buy it. This, of course, means, too, where you know definitely you're not going to buy a certain item, even if you do have money. Well, I mean definitely, because in many cases where a person thinks he's definite, a good salesman changes his mind. Where a person certainly will not buy this item, he should not stand there looking at it, because he will cause a sadness or hard feeling on the part of the storekeeper who thought he might have had a sale, and it turned out to be a letdown. Third item was the case of carefulness about the laws of Midah in many details, which of course are too it to go into now. But these laws were taught in those days with such stringency, they were passed down to us with added strictness. And to remember always that the laws of Midah are laws of Karit, Chas v'Shalom. How careful a person should be about the mitzvah of mikveh for the wife, much more so than mikveh for a man. To be well acquainted with the laws of Midah too, you should not be trapped into doing something unwittingly that might be wrong, Chas v'Shalom. Yelena adds, a person should not go out alone at night, because the shadim who are found in the streets seek out a person going alone. They will generally not attack people going in 2s and pairs. A person going alone, they seek them out and they attack them, chas v'shalom. Yonah says this was up to a certain point, because the fact was that the leader of the Shedim has an army of 180,000 angels of destruction, and Jesus' army out in the streets, and everyone has permission from heaven to damage any person they meet. There was a time once when they constituted a real danger, until one day the Menachem Mendel Schneerson was out in the street, and this Sheda met him, and she said to the Menachem Mendel Schneerson, if not for the fact that in heaven I hear the announcement saying, be careful, beware of Hanina, my son, and his Torah, how precious he is in the eyes of heaven, then I would have put your life in danger. And the Bechina answered, if I am considered so important in heaven, I hereby decree that you should never come into civilized areas anymore. You stay in forests, jungles, deserts, but never come into civilization again. She pleaded with him. She said, you're a good-hearted person. Have pity on me. Allow me a little bit time. I shouldn't be locked up in these desert areas. He said to her, fine, I'll allow you Friday nights and Tuesday nights, because these are 2 nights of the week when Jews generally stay at home. They don't go out on Friday nights, but Tuesday nights too, for some reasons, they were unaccustomed to going out. So from that time on, the Yonah says the warning was given out, a person should never go out alone on Friday nights or Tuesday nights. Many years later, she went out and she met Abaye, alone. She said to Abaye, if not for the fact that in heaven they announced, beware of Abaye and his Torah, I would have put your life in danger now. Abaye said to her, if I am that important in heaven, then I decree that you should never again come into civilization ever. Meaning even these 2 nights which were granted to you, you should be deprived of now. So there was no way of her bargaining for any permission, which means that they no longer jeopardize civilized areas. The Gemara asks, but we do see that Shedim are present. At times they are found in cities. The Gemara answers, these are not regular visitors. The armies of the Shedim are outside of the cities. Once in a while they overstep the boundary. One of their horses runs off, they have to run in to retrieve it, which means it's accidentally that they come into the city. But ordinarily there are no Shedim permitted to come into civilized areas. They are found only in desolate, isolated places. Yonah says that the Rav gave advice to his student Ravasi. He told him, do not live in a city where the head of the city is either a Talmid Chacham, as we said before, or a doctor, a Havdil, because they both, the Havdil, are so occupied with their own type of studies that they are forced to ignore the needs of the public. Second, do not live in a city where there are no guards, horses, dogs, guard dogs to protect properties. No dogs to guard their properties, no horses to chase after thieves if they do steal, because naturally this will invite thieves to that place. Third, he said, do not marry 2 wives, because if you marry 2 wives, it's very possible they might become very friendly and plan something harmful to you. poison you, or anything like that. If you are going to marry more than one wife, marry 3. Because generally, out of the 3, you'll have one that'll be loyal. So in case 2 of them will make an evil plan against you, the 3rd one will reveal that plan to you. You'll be safe. Rav said to Rav Kahana, another student, you may work at the lowest trade, that is stripping a dead animal of its hide. Turn a dead animal inside out, but do not turn your words inside out. Which means that when you say a word, it should be the same in your mind as on your tongue. When you give a word, it should be kept. Your yes should be a yes, or no should be a no. Do not change your word. Also, strip an animal, which is a very low type of trade, in the middle of the marketplace. Do not be ashamed, as long as that is your trade. That is your work. You're getting wages for it. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's still an honest living, rather than do something dishonest, where you might feel more professional on a higher level, but since there might be a trace of dishonesty or begging, borrowing, it is better to work in an honest trade, no matter how low it may be. Never say that it's not fit for my kavod. There's no bigger kavod than earning an honest dollar. If you go out on a trip, no matter how short the trip is, always take food with you. You never know, if you might come to a place where there'll be no food available. You might arrive at night, the stores are closed. You might come to a place where there's no hotel or inn to buy food, so that, or you might not have a kosher supply somewhere. Always take food with you. You'll be safe and certain. Rav said to his son Rabbi Chia this advice: do not take medicines, which means do not take drugs. Any type of drugs, narcotics. 2 reasons. First place, they are very habit-forming, and therefore they can prove dangerous. Plus the fact that they can prove dangerous financially. A person takes drugs that are habit-forming, he is forced into a new expense that increases as time goes by. It reaches a point that's more than he can afford. And this can lead him to a life of crime. This sounds like a statement that was made a few years ago. This was said by Rav nearly 2,000 years ago. There's a forewarning at that time for what's so obvious today. Rav also said, do not take big steps, because a person who takes long steps affects his eyesight. As we said, the eyesight is affected by a long step, and it's corrected by looking at the candle at the time of Kiddush on Friday night. Havdalah. Do not have a tooth pulled at all costs. Treat it as much as possible. It's a living thing. Try to keep a tooth as long as a person is alive. Unless Chas v'Shalom it's so affected that it's impossible to keep it. But if there's a slightest chance of treating a tooth, then have confidence and hope that this tooth can be cured. Apparently, for these words, it seems that if a person is careful, there's no reason to ever lose any tooth. That's what appears to be the words in the commentaries. But at least the lesson is that a person could certainly keep teeth much longer than dentists advise. So never take the advice of a dentist to pull a tooth until you exhausted every possible means of saving it, sparing it. And do not start up with goyim, because there are ways, Chas v'Shalom, that they could get back at Jews. So avoid open confrontation with Goyim as much as possible. This was the advice of Rav. Rabbeinu Kadosh told his sons the following words of advice. Do not live in a certain city, he mentioned, but this means any city where this holds true, where the people there are letzanim, pranksters, jokesters who like to play jokes and pranks, who kid around too much. Because the Torah warns against letzanut. The first sentence in Tehillim, King David starts Tehillim with the words Ashrei Ha'ish. Blessed, fortunate is that person who does not stay in the company of letzim, those who like to joke around too much, because this is not a place for joking, meaning this world is a place of seriousness. A person should take life seriously, especially not to bring on simcha with foolish items. Simcha of mitzvah, yes, certainly. It says, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. Serve Hashem with simcha, but not the kind of simcha that's wrong, chorabut. Therefore, he said, the city where these people are in abundance, avoid staying close to them. Avoid even living in that city. Second, he said, do not sit on the bed of a goya. What does that mean? One thing it means, do not go to sleep without saying Kriyat Shema. That's like a goy goes to bed, goes right to sleep. A Jew, before going to bed, is supposed to say Kriyat Shema. He's supposed to offer his soul up to Hashem. Yadcha af kidruchi. I offer my soul to Hashem for safekeeping. Hashem kel emet. Another interpretation is, and the meaning behind it was, because of the story of Papa, who once sat on the bed of was about to sit on the bed of a goya, and he realized that this goya had killed her son. Her child was dead, and she waited him to sit down on that bed, then she could accuse him of killing her child. And therefore, we cannot trust places where these goyim might falsely accuse a Jew of such types of murder. Rabbi Nachman also said to his children, be very careful not to ever try to avoid paying taxes to the government or trying to smuggle goods through customs, because eventually you may be caught, and the fines and penalties might cost you so many times over what you expected to gain by saving these taxes that you could possibly lose your entire fortune, chas v'shalom. This, in addition to the fact that there is a law in the Torah forbidden to steal from goyim. There's a law that you must obey the laws of the land. The Torah law, which says you must obey the laws of the land. Aside from this, is also the advice: do not be foolish and think you may gain anything, because the loss involved could be manyfold that of a slight gain. The Papa said, do not go into a house where cats are found. A house where there's a cat. Do not go into that house without shoes, because a cat is the one animal that has the power to defeat a snake in battle. It kills a snake and eats it. Snakes generally have small germs, bacteria. And these are very dangerous. And if a person goes into this house or walks in that house without shoes, the germs attach themselves to the feet, and it can cause untold harm. The Gemara says, on the other hand, a person should not go into a house where there are no cats at all, because of the fact that he might be attacked by a snake, and he can have the same type of risk to his life. In a house where there are cats, you will generally not find any snakes. It's the greatest precaution against snakes. You notice now that there are 3 types of people that a person should not start up with, be jealous of, try to do harm, or 3 types rather of katan, young. 3 types of young not to start with. One is a young goy. Another is a small snake. The third is a young student. Because you never know what the future holds in store for them. This young guy might someday become a governor or a king. And he might take it out against all Jews, Chas v'Shalom. The Gemara tells a story of such a case like that, where the Jews started with a young guy and then they caused them a lot of damage later on to the entire city. A small snake has a long memory. When he grows older, he remembers the place where he was harmed, and he comes back to take revenge. A young student who is mistreated, he becomes older and more learned and more advanced than those who had mistreated him before. He now comes back to play them down, to show them up that they know little, and he can cause much more embarrassment than was caused them when he was young. Even as this further advice is that when you go out to do business and you return you went to a distant place to purchase certain merchandise, and you came back. And while the dust is still on your shoes, it means you had no time to rest even, get rid of what you bought. Never hold on to merchandise long. Sell it as quickly as you can. Or when you come back, go right to the marketplace and sell it. It is not healthy to hold on to goods and hope that the prices will go up. Also, if you're in doubt about selling a thing at a certain price, first sell it, and then be sorry later that you sold it too quickly, because you find you could have gotten a higher price. It is better to be sorry having sold a thing at a smaller profit than to deeply regret the fact that you didn't sell it and you're stuck with that goods completely later on. Small regret compared to the big regret of not being able to sell it at all and lose even your principal investment. Advice to a businessman: the person comes into your store to buy any kind of item, food for example, which has to be placed into a bag, to a container, or any kind of merchandise put into a package. Before you package this item or these items, first take the cash, put it into your pocket, and then package the items and give it to the customer. Because if you don't, you'll always find yourself in a controversy, an argument with the customer as to whether the money has been paid or not. First, make sure you have the money in your pocket, and then open the bag and place the merchandise into it. Rabbi Yochanan said, a number of items of advice: when you go out to battle, never be the first to go out. Be the last. Try to be the last one of the battle lines, so that when the time comes to return, you'll be the first one into the city. If you are victorious, then you get the first gala, the first cheers, the biggest gifts. You'll be the last one killed and the first one rewarded for this victory. So, as a matter of advice, safety advice, try to stay in the rear lines always, because you'll end up first, where it counts most. The hidden message here is, the rear lines means be the lowest of the top, the tail of a lion, because you'll still be part of the lion which is first, uppermost. The Buddha and Tzadik are near the other. Continue to see you in Gemara. The Gemara says Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said three things in the name of the elders of Yerushalmi, the wise men of Yerushalmi. First, he said, if a man has a daughter, his primary concern should be to marry off that daughter. And if that daughter reaches a certain age that is dangerous, he still has not married her off. Which age is that? According to the Gemara, the age of 12 and a half, 12 years and 6 months. That means that she is already considered like an old maid. Then in desperation, he should even free his slave in order to marry her off, even to the slave. The lesson, of course, is that a person should know that the greatest burden is an unmarried daughter, and he should not be too particular in selecting a mate. Of course, we have learned that a man should sell everything he has in order to get a son-in-law who is a Talmid Chacham, certainly. But if he has searched high and wide for one, rather than leave his daughter, remain single, chas v'shalom, and take the next best thing or the next, and so on. Overall, get the daughter married off. Secondly, Rabbi Shimon Levi said, be careful about staying on roofs. Staying on a roof is dangerous, not because he might fall off, but because a roof is a high place, and he might see other roofs that are lower. And on the roofs that are lower, he might see women there, and we find that the whole trap set for King David was through a roof. Once going on the roof of the palace, he saw Bathsheba, and so this brought about a desire and led to the whole story of King David and Bathsheba. In that case, of course, there was nothing wrong, chas v'shalom. It was an act of kedusha. King David was pure throughout. It was done to teach people the power of Teshuva. But it shows, though, how risky it is to be on a roof where a person who is not that strong spiritually, who could not resist temptation, might see things which may lead him into chas v'shalom sin. Third, Rabbi Shimon Levi said, be careful of your first son-in-law in reference to your wife, because a mother-in-law marries off her daughter and is very affectionate to her son-in-law. She too appreciates the fact that her daughter is now being taken care of by her husband, and there's an additional amount of affection shown by a mother-in-law to a son-in-law. This can manifest itself in a very expensive manner. she might be overindulgent and spend a lot of money in gifts for her son-in-law, more than her husband can afford. Therefore, the Gemara says, be careful about your first son-in-law. See to it that your wife doesn't spend too much, doesn't go overboard for him. We had mentioned before about matters of business, and one item that we should include previously. The Gemara says that, this is one of Rav's statements before, it is better a small pot from the ground rather than a bushel full from the top floor. The meaning is, it is better to earn a little bit of money close by, which means you don't have to leave home or leave your hometown, rather than earn a lot if you've got to go a far distance for it. If you can earn a little satisfactory living in your own hometown, do that rather than the prospects of making a lot of money by leaving town, going away from home. There's nothing that makes it worthwhile to leave home, go out of town to earn more money. This is the advice of the Gemara. A lot of people would do well to take heed of this advice. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan said, there are three people who inherit Olam Haba, Gan Eden. One, he who lives in Eretz Yisrael. The mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael is so great that he inherits Gan Eden. Note the word he inherits, because we have learned in the Gemara that one who walks 4 steps, 4 amot in Eretz Yisrael receives a chilik, a part in Gan Eden. Inherits means that he's closer, he's related to it. Like one who's related, a blood relation, he is part of it. He becomes part of Gan Eden. It's actually his by inheritance, which means much more than just receiving a chilik, meaning he is a stranger. And this is for one who lives in Eretz Yisrael. Second is one who raises his children in the study of Torah. He does not spare expense or effort in seeing that his children go to a yeshiva. A person who raises his children in that manner, see that his children go to yeshiva rather than sending them out to business at an early age, this person becomes part of, he inherits Olam Haba. Third is a person who makes Havdalah on wine every Saturday night. Immediately at the end of Shabbat, he makes Havdalah on wine, he inherits Olam Haba. Every person does this. This, of course, means that a person who cannot afford the wine, a person who is short on wine, rather than drink that wine, have the pleasure of drinking it during Shabbat, he leaves that wine over so he can have the important mitzvah of making Havdalah on wine after Shabbat is over. Rabbi Yochanan said, Hashem announces each day about 3 types of people. In other words, Hashem is proud of these 3. One is a ravak. Ravak means an unmarried man who lives in a large city and does not commit sins, meaning he does not go to places where he might be tempted with women. He does not go with women that he shouldn't. He does not go to places where he might see things that would tempt him, arouse him. And the fact that he is unmarried, he doesn't have a home, a wife to go to. Still, despite this, he refrains completely from any contact with anything pertaining to women. This is an item that Hashem himself announces with pride about this person in heaven. Second is a poor man, one who is very poor, and he finds a lost article, which rightfully he may keep. There's no siman, but he knows the owner, and he returns this lost article to the owner. This poor man, despite the fact that he is so poor, and this lost article is money, for example, he could use for food for himself, still he returns it. This shows an unusual degree of honesty. Third is a wealthy man who gives maaser, 1/10 of his earnings of his property, and does so secretly. He doesn't come out and show, here is $1,000, my maaser. He could pride himself, boast of the large amounts that he gives. Maaser is compulsory for everyone. But a rich man can not openly and say, look at the tremendous amount that I give. This is my maaser. It amounts to a fortune. 1,000, 10,000 or more, depending upon his wealth. If he does this secretly, this is something that makes Hashem proud. These three items, notice, why just these three? There are a lot of mitzvot for that. These three represent a person who overcomes the three types of temptations that exist. One is the ta'ava for women, and the most outstanding one is an unmarried man who does not allow temptation to defeat him. Second is ta'ava for money, especially a poor man who is in such dire need of it. Despite this, he does not allow the Yetzer Hara to persuade him to keep this lost article. He returns it to the owner. Third is the ta'ava for kavod, honor, people to respect him. That's the case of a rich man who gives his maaser, for he could receive so much honor for his philanthropy. Still, he does it secretly. Yonah says that Rav Safra was unmarried. He lived in a large city, and he was sitting together with Rava when this statement was made. Safra's face lit up, and he said, "Wonderful! This means that I am so important. Hashem announces about me in heaven each day." Rava said to him, "Not like you. Your case is not what the Gemara means. Your case is simple. You live in a big city, but you sit in the yeshiva all day and learn. That's no big accomplishment. You're not actually overpowering, battling against the Yetzer Hara." This refers to a case like Rav Chanina and Rav Ushia, who sold shoes in the marketplace in Eretz Yisrael. In a certain place, this was a market where zonot used to come a lot, and they had shoes for women. These women would enter their shop and they would try on his shoes, but they would never raise their eyes to look at these women customers. These are the holy rabbis of Eretz Yisrael. This is what the Gemara refers to. The Gemara says there are three people that Hashem likes very much. One, person who never allows himself to fall into chaos, never allows himself to lose his temper. Second, a person who never allows himself to overindulge in intoxicating beverages, become drunk. And third, most of all, a person who is forgiving very quickly. Anyone insults him, he does not keep a grudge, he forgives immediately. These are the three that Hashem likes with affection. There are three that Hashem dislikes. One is a person who speaks with his mouth what he does not think in his heart. He thinks one thing and says something else, meaning that he falsifies. Second is a person who knows testimony for his friend and refuses to testify, and thereby his friend could lose that case. Third, a person who sees his friend do something that is wrong, disgraceful, shameful, and he testifies against him alone. Well, testifying is considered effective only when there are two witnesses. But if there's only one witness, it means nothing. It means that this person accomplished nothing more than to speak lashon hara against a Jew. The Gemara says, for example, a beautiful illustration. There were two people. One man's name was Tuvia, the second was Zigud. Case happened with these two men. Tuvia committed a sin, whatever the sin was, and Zigud came before that Tata. He testified as a witness. He had seen Tuvia commit this crime. That Papa said, give this man malkut, lashings. Lash this witness. Zigud looked up in surprise and said these famous words. Tuvia sins, and Zigud gets lashed for it. What kind of a justice is this? He commits the sins and I get beaten up? My Papa answered, yes, that's right, because you came yourself to testify. All you're doing is just speaking Lashon Hara against the Jew. We cannot accept your testimony, which means that there's no question of truth about what you say. It's only Lashon Hara. For that, you get 39 lashes, because there's a pasuk in the Torah which says, one witness shall not have any effect against the person. He shall not rise up to testify against the man. The Gemara asks, what if there were two students? The case with a rabbi. One student sees another student committing a wrong. Is the student allowed to report this act to the rabbi about the other student? The Gemara answers, Rav Ashi answered, yes, if the rabbi believes this student implicitly, he knows that he is honest and will not tell a lie, then he should report this to the rabbi. If not, if the rabbi has any doubts about the student's honesty, then he should not report this, because then it's considered only Lashon Hara. The Gemara says there are three people whose lives are not considered living. You cannot call them living. One person who has an overabundance of kindness, pity upon others. He has so soft a heart that whenever someone comes there with a problem, he'll give away whatever he has, so that he never has a life of his own. Whoever comes to him with need of anything, he will go out of his way, work, money, effort, and therefore it will lead to others to come to him too. He'll never lead a life of his own. Second is a person who is extremely temperamental, who has fits of temper. This person lives a life of chaos, which affects his heart, his nerves, and he does not lead a normal life. Third is a person who has a depressed mind. He's continually moody or sensitive, and everything irks him. If something is not exactly just right, then he becomes frustrated. He becomes hurt, and at no time does this person have peace of mind. These three people are considered as though they do not have a life to lead like other people. The life is not their own. The other says, no, there are four people whom the human mind cannot conceive, cannot understand them, or better still, cannot tolerate them. They don't make sense, and in a sense they are disgusting. One is a person who is very poor. Well, poor generally means poor in money. The Gemara says elsewhere that poor really means poor in mentality and wisdom. The Zohar Kadosh says poor always means poor in Torah and mitzvot, knowledge. In any case, either one of these applies here. A person who is very poor and he has ge'aveh, conceit, haughtiness, this the mind cannot understand, cannot tolerate. A person who has a lot, wealth, wisdom, strength, we can understand why he has conceit. It's wrong, but it could be understood. Here it doesn't make sense at all. He's poor. What has he got to be conceited about? It's a sin and there's no reason for it. No logical reason why he should have conceit. This is something that sort of discusses the human mind. Second is a case of a very wealthy man who lies in order to cheat for money, for small change. He's very wealthy. Why be a cheat in his petty items? This the mind cannot tolerate. Third is a case of an old man who commits sins with women. It's understood that committing sins with women is chas v'shalom a serious crime. Any person, no matter how young, at least it makes sense, it's logic. A young person has that temptation. But that an old man should do this does not bear out according to logic. Fourth is the case of a leader of a city or a community who acts too strictly with the community for no reason at all. In other words, he forces them to pay taxes, to perform certain duties, only for his benefit. When it comes to the needs of the community, he doesn't do anything to help them in return. And this makes no sense. If he's a leader, and he shows his leadership, then he should show it at a time when the community can benefit. There are some rabbis who say that we add to this also, there's no logic behind a man who divorces his wife, and then remarries her, and then divorces her a second time, and then remarries her. In other words, he should make up his mind once and for all. If he wants her, keep her. If not, get rid of her. The minute says this is not something that's not logical, because there can be a case where the ketubah, the marriage contract, is so large that he divorced her hoping to get rid of her, but he finds that he could not raise the necessary money, so rather than be in hak, he figured it was cheaper to take his wife back. But he tried a second time. Or a case where he has children. He thought he could divorce her and get along with the children, but he finds that it's impossible, so for the children's sake, he's forced to take her back. The letter says there are certain people who are considered in chidim, in heaven, where heaven itself places these people in chidim. Not on earth, but heaven itself does that. So that a heavenly chidim declared in heaven against these people. One is a man who is not married, who takes his time about it, who is not anxious, and lets time slip away without searching, bending every effort in finding a wife. If he tries hard, he doesn't have hatzlacha, doesn't have mazal of finding a wife, at least he has tried. The one who doesn't try, one who is indifferent about it, this person has against him a heavenly chidim. Second is a man who is married but doesn't have children and doesn't strive for it, at least to pray as hard as possible. If there's nothing he can do about it physically, at least tefillah, at least to desire it, to do whatever is possible in his power. And if he doesn't, then he is in a heavenly chidim. The Gemara says even if it requires divorcing a wife, in the olden days, if a man was married for 10 years, and then it's just now, and his wife didn't give birth, it was customary to divorce her. That was in the old time. Third is a man who has children and does not provide the study of Torah for them. He doesn't raise them in learning Torah. Fourth is a man who does not put on tefillin on the head and the arm. Fifth is a man who does not wear tzitzit. He considers it unimportant, chas v'shalom. He figures it's enough to put it on in the morning for sewing. The rest of the day he is mizalzel. He considers it very unimportant. He degrades the importance of tzitzit. And the person who is not particular about seeing that his doors, every door in his home should have a mezuzah. Also, one who goes without shoes. This we had mentioned before too, the mitzvah of wearing shoes and how long it is to go without shoes. But in all these cases, you know, it adds here there is a heavenly chidim placed upon this person in heaven. Lastly, some rabbis say this also refers to a person who refuses to participate in a seudat mitzvah, a feast, a festive occasion of mitzvah, like a brit milah, or a chatuna, where it's a mitzvah to attend, a kiddush, and so on. In other words, a person should be very careful not to fall into any one of these categories. The Gemara says, eat. The word for onions is batzel in Hebrew. Batzel is onions, and the word for shadow or shade is tzel. In a shadow is bitzel. This sort of rhymes, batzel and bitzel. The Gemara says, eat onions, meaning eat vegetables. Do not spend too much money on your food. Don't be too elaborate. And you'll know that you can live in the shade of your home freely without worrying about people coming to demand money from you. Collectors, creditors coming to take your home away. Your home will be safe. Do not eat fatty foods, expensive foods, because then you'll always be worried about creditors when you spend too much money. Plus the fact that you'll always have developed a taste for these things, you'll find it at times an expense that's greater than you can bear. One who's accustomed to eating cheaper foods, it doesn't bother him. One who's not, that person suffers with his food unless he has the type of food he's accustomed to. The answer is too now, an important question that's in the mind of many people. If you have a limited amount of money, spend less for food and more for a home. It is more important to spend lavishly on the home and less on food. It would seem to us the contrary. You take care of your body physically more than you would of your house. The Gemara says that it is more important to spend the money, greater portion of money, the ratio, of course, naturally, the ratio greater upon a home and less on food, because you'll be able to sustain yourself with a little less food and less expensive food. And the food that you've eaten is enough nourishment while you can then enjoy a beautiful home, rather than to spend the money on food which after you've eaten it is gone, and have a home that does not give you the peace of mind that a nice apartment or home would. The Gemara says that they said in a mashal, an example of Eretz Yisrael. The word for expensive meat is alita. It's like the tail part of the animal. It's the most expensive part that is brought usually on the mizbeach, on the altar. And the word for upstairs, the attic, is ilita. Again, it rhymes. The Gemara says one who eats alita, expensive food, he has to hide in the attic, because he'll always be in debt to creditors. Overspending for food will find him in debt. He'll have to hide out from people. He cannot be able to face people. The one who eats kankuli, that means vegetables, is the cheapest type of food. And a kikla, which means in the open marketplace, you can sit anywhere in the city, in the marketplace, in front of large crowds of people, sit there peacefully without the slightest worry of any creditors, because he will not owe people any money. And Arizal said, one word, that it is better to be in debt to yourself. Owe yourself a meal, owe yourself a garment, owe yourself a luxury, meaning don't spend it on yourself, and you owe it to yourself, rather than do spend it on yourself and owe it to others, to creditors. A person should sacrifice a lot of things, luxuries and even necessities if necessary, not to borrow and to be indebted to others, because one of the worst experiences in life is a balchov, one who is in debt. Here it says that King David always said Mizmor David. Mizmor means a prayer by King David, but this refers to a prayer said with the Shekhinah resting upon him. Mizmor David or David Mizmor, difference whether he started with the Shekhinah upon him, or whether he started first and the Shekhinah came after he started. There's a machloket, by the way, between the Gemara and the Zohar Kadosh, which one came first. But the Gemara says that this teaches us that this word, of course, means a song of happiness. It shows that the Shekhinah does not rest upon a person who is sad or who is lightheaded or who speaks words of unimportance, or words that are wasted, that don't have any kedusha in them. The Shekhinah will only rest upon a person who is in the act of performing the mitzvah with simcha, not where there is chas v'shalom atzvut or sadness. So the Gemara asks, well, we have learned that when a student sits in front of the rabbi, he's supposed to be very serious. No laughter, no act of simcha, which means no lightness, happiness. The opposite of happiness means not just sad, but serious, extremely serious. The Gemara says that's true. We're speaking about the difference is that the student must be extremely serious. The rabbi should be with simcha. Simcha means a little bit lighter than serious. The Gemara says, but even in the rabbi too, there are two cases. When he is teaching Torah, it must be in extreme seriousness. Before he begins, then he should show simcha. And as an example, the Gemara says that the Rabbah, when he had to begin his shiur, the words of halacha, he would always begin with sort of a light statement, like a joke, to bring the students into a good mood. Then he would sit with fear and awe and open his mouth and begin words of Torah. So we say simcha, it means at first with simcha. Then when the Shekhinah comes upon a person, which means today, when he starts to speak words of Torah, which are the words of Hashem, then he should be extremely serious. He then explains the pasuk, Hodu Hashem ki tov, praise to Hashem who is good. Good means that which he gives to a person. Shefa, blessings he gives to a person. Also, good means forgiving a person's sins, at times through Yisurim. Both are the same goodness. In other words, Hashem gives to a rich man wealth. What is wealth? Cows, oxen. They're very expensive. They cost hundreds of dollars. When Hashem wants to punish the wealthy man, he takes away his oxen from him. So, according to the measure of wealth, that's how he punishes him. A poor person, poorer than the rich man, has only a lamb. Hashem gives him the lamb, and the punishment takes the lamb away from him. An orphan, it's a matter of just an egg. A widow, a chicken, each one in ratio, measurement. Hashem does not punish the poorest by taking away a tremendous amount, and the rich one taking away a small amount. That which he favored him with, he granted him, this is what he takes away in punishment. Hodu Hashem, praise Hashem Kito, because he is good. In that goodness that he gives, that's what he shows goodness in forgiving for his sin by taking that back in return. Rabbi Nachman said, earning a living is not simple. There's a saying, it's very difficult to earn a living, to make $1. How difficult? It says that there's a famous word, that word is oi. Oi means a deep sigh. Oh, how hard it is to make $1. How hard, how deep is that oi? We know that a woman who gives birth, there's a special chapter in Tehillim, chapter 20. This chapter has 70 words in it. This is the chapter for only giving birth. And the Gemara says this shows that a woman has to scream 70 times before she finally gives birth. She goes through these labor pains. Now, for a woman giving birth 70 times is only half of the oi of a person who has to earn a living. It's twice as hard to earn a living as it is for a woman to give birth. You got to sigh twice as many times oi before he can make a living. The Yonah adds this was difficult for a person to make a living, to receive his livelihood, as the difficulty of dividing the waters of the Red Sea. It's as much of a miracle to have a person receive Shefa as it was to divide the waters of the Red Sea, Kriyat Yamsuf, which was the biggest miracle of all time. And of course, the key to this naturally is bitachon. A person who has confidence, faith in Hashem, he will have this livelihood easy, just as the Jews who had faith when they stood at the Red Sea. Those who had faith knew that there was nothing to worry about because they believed implicitly that Hashem would provide them with this miracle. So to a person who has pure bitachon, pure faith in Hashem, he has this livelihood simply because to him, the dividing of the waters of the Red Sea was not difficult at all. For Hashem, the miracle is not difficult. He leaves it to Hashem to provide this miracle for him, miracle of receiving a living. He says Hashem is notei lechem l'chol basar. Hashem provides for everyone. I believe that, and I awake with confidence this shefa, this downpour of money and necessities. Here it says, the pasuk says, "V'emet Hashem le'olam." Hashem is truth forever. This pasuk was said by the Malach Gabriel, the angel of fire. Of course, at the time that King Amrafel, or known as King Nimrod, Menachem, threw Avraham Avinu into the pit of fire, and this Malach came before Hashem, and he said, Hashem, let me go down and rescue this tzadik, this one tzadik from this pit of fire. Hashem said, no, I am Hashem Echad, I am one. Abraham is one. He is one tzadik in the world now, and it's fitting for one to rescue one. I will personally rescue Avraham Avinu. Hashem rescued Avraham Avinu from this fire. But Hashem does not refuse, does not hold back reward for one who deserves it. Here was a malach who wanted to perform the mitzvah of saving the tzaddik of the world, Avraham Avinu. So he deserved a reward, and Hashem said, I will pay you back for this, for your good intentions. There will come a time when there will be 3 descendants of this tzaddik who will have the same experience before them, and I will give you the opportunity then. These 3 were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, friends of Daniel the Navi. And when the king of Babel threw them into the fire, then the Malach Yudka came before Hashem. He was the angel of ice. And he said, Hashem, allow me to go down and to turn this fire into ice, cool it for these 3 tzaddikim. And then this Malach Gabriel came, Malach of fire, and said, that's no trick. There's no miracle there. The angel of ice to turn off the fire is no big miracle. I am the angel of fire. Let me go down and make the fire hot on the outside, cool on the inside, so that if people will see, when they will see that 3 tzaddikim are walking around unharmed, they will say there's no danger there. They'll try to walk into, they'll come to this wall of fire, will be destroyed. Hashem said, you go down, you deserve it, because I promised you that you'll be given the opportunity to save the 3 descendants. That was when this Malach said, Emet Hashem le'olam. Hashem's word is true forever. Generations later, Hashem keeps his word. We find in the Tehillim, King David says many times the pasuk Lamanatseach Mizmor David. What does Lamanatseach mean? Nitzachon means victory. One who battles against another one and defeats him. Victory. Who is the victor in this case? What is this battle? Who are we speaking to? This is a prayer to Hashem. Lamanatseach, the person praying, is winning a victory against Hashem. And Mizmor means happy, very happy about it. Who is happy? Hashem. The defeated, Kaviyachol, is happy that he's being defeated. The Gemara says, look at how different the midah, quality of Hashem is than that of human beings. If a human being is defeated, he's very sad. But Hashem accepts defeat, and he is happy. What kind of defeat is this? A person who is in the wrong and wants to exonerate himself, to purify himself. He comes before Hashem and he wants to battle for his forgiveness. He prays hard. He wins over against the heavenly decree. He should be punished. He wins over by doing Teshuva and praying to Hashem. Hashem is very happy to Kaviyachol be defeated in this battle. This person prayed so hard and won out on this victory. That's why the Gemara says this pasuk by Yecheskel Hanavi, when he saw the Maaseh Merkavah, famous vision of the upper angels in heaven, he said he saw there a hand beneath the wings of the angels. What does that mean? A hand under the wings of the angels. The Gemara says this means that these are angels who are avenging angels against the person who is a sinner, and it is their duty, their mission, to destroy him, chas v'shalom, to punish him. But beneath their wings, hidden there, Kaviyachol, is the hand of Hashem that is stretched out to accept, to receive the person who wants to do Teshuva. Despite these attacking angels, hiddenly Hashem leaves the room open, a receiving hand to take these people who want to come back, and Hashem accepts them, protects them from these avenging angels, angels of din, of harsh decrees. Hashem accepts these Ba'alei Teshuva, protects them and elevates them to a level above din, to the level of chesed, kindness of Hashem. The Gemara says that when Yosef HaTzadik was in Egypt, every country came to him to purchase food. They had to pay for it silver or whatever precious item they had exchanged for this food. And it says that every country that came emptied their coffers, their treasures, into Egypt. That means that Yosef HaTzadik had the treasures of the entire world. And that's why when the Jews left Egypt, they left with wealth, because there was that much gold and silver in Egypt. But besides this wealth, Yosef HaTzadik hid three tremendous treasures in Egypt. One of these treasures was found by Korach. Korach was that evil person who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu. And he was extremely wealthy, extraordinarily wealthy, because of this treasure he found. He was the man who the earth swallowed up with the rebellious Moshe Rabbeinu. Second, it was found by the Roman king, Antoninus. The third is hidden. When Mashiach comes, this will be given to tzadikim. That means it's a higher type of treasure. But the Gemara says, King Solomon says, there are times when wealth can prove to be a person's undoing. Wealth can destroy its owner, chas v'shalom. Not always is wealth a good factor. It can lead a person to sin, can take a person away from Torah, away from learning, into a wrong type of life. How wealthy was Korach? The Gemara says that there were 300 mules. 300 mules that were loaded with just the keys of Korach's treasures. 300 mules carrying these keys. Now imagine if he had to have 300 mules carrying keys, how many vast storage houses of wealth he had. This is what the Gemara says. There are hidden translations to this. Musar, not Musar translations, who say the shortest, sharpest interpretation is simply that why did Korach have to have 300 camels loaded with keys? How do you find the right key to the right place? And why not have just one solid strong box or 10 keys? Why so many keys? The answer is that he had one strong box, of course, but he had to have 300 doors, or 300 doors times that many keys, as found in the on each camel, in order to get to this strong box. This was done because he was so miserly. When a poor man came to him for some money, he said to him, yes, wait, I've got to open my strong box. By the time he got to opening up these thousands of doors, keys, poor man either died or he left in disgust. That's how he saved the expense of giving out charity. And this, of course, teaches us that a person who is zochet to money should see to it that it is spent properly, with wisdom, giving to the right places, not to allow the money to be master over him. Chas v'shalom, he should be master over the money, know that this is a blessing that Hashem gave to him for a reason. Use this money wisely in the serving of Hashem. Through tzedakah, using the money for Torah, his children's learning Torah, to distribute it among those who study Torah, and to use it for the sake of the expenses of Shabbat, and Tovim, and mitzvot. Money on this world is a very great treasure because you can buy a lot of mitzvot, a lot of Gan Eden with money, if it is used wisely. We should be zocheh to accept this advice, to live according to the wisdom of the Torah, and to this to gain for ourselves our chelik in Olam Haba, be zocheh during our lifetime to see the coming of Mashiach, Binyan Bet HaMikdash, and Behera B'Yameinu, Amen, B'Yamein.